Story 1. Coworkers conspire to humiliate you. You outsmart them quietly, fully expanded version. It started as a whisper. Just one comment in the break room, barely audible over the hum of the coffee machine. I don't think Alex will notice if we swap the files before the meeting. I didn't react. Not yet. I just observed. I had learned long ago that people who try to humiliate you usually reveal more about themselves than you ever could. Over the next few days, the whispers became plans. My colleagues, people I had trusted, shared lunch breaks with, even celebrated birthdays alongside, began orchestrating small disruptions. A misplaced presentation here, a subtly altered spreadsheet there. They didn't want to outright sabotage me. They wanted laughter at my expense. A shared story at the next happy hour. Alex didn't see that coming. At first, I felt a tight knot of anger, but I didn't let it show. I knew my advantage was quiet patience. Step 1. Observe and gather evidence. I noted every comment, every subtle shift in responsibility, every accidental misplacement. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't even tell my manager. I wanted to understand their pattern. It became clear, quickly. They thrived on manipulation, exploiting any small gap in attention or procedure. I started keeping detailed logs. Dates, times, the exact files moved or altered, who was nearby, and any reactions. I even set up a hidden folder on my local drive to back up every spreadsheet, email, and report. I wasn't paranoid. I was preparing. Step 2. Anticipate. If they moved a file, I created a backup. If they changed a number in a spreadsheet, I logged the original. Every action became traceable without giving them the satisfaction of confrontation. They thought they were clever. I let them. Meanwhile, I observed the subtle dynamics at work. Tina and Marcus, the ringleaders, would exchange glances and whispers when they thought I wasn't looking. There was a rhythm too. Their plotting, almost predictable, if you paid attention. I learned when the breaks were busiest, when my manager was least likely to check in, and when the office doors were open or closed. Step 3. Lay the groundwork. I began introducing small, deliberate mistakes of my own, files slightly mislabeled, emails intentionally delayed only to catch them myself before anyone else noticed. This allowed me to test how far they would push and which colleagues were truly complicit. By the end of the week, I had mapped the network of silent sabotage with near-perfect clarity. I also started noticing the smaller patterns of office behavior. Who was eager to please, who thrived on gossip, and who quietly observed like I did. These people became silent allies, whether they knew it or not. A simple nod from one of them could tip me off that something was about to happen, giving me precious seconds to intercept it. Step 4. Expand the tactics. I began subtle interventions. If someone was trying to swap files, I would accidentally walk past at the right moment, offering a smile and a casual comment. If a spreadsheet was altered, I created a parallel version for my own use. Nothing was obvious. Nothing would betray my involvement, but it gave me complete control over the situation. During lunch breaks, I started observing team dynamics more carefully. Conversations that seemed casual. Did you see Alex today? Or, I don't think Alex will notice that were actually coded strategies. By mentally mapping these exchanges, I learned which colleagues were the ringleaders who were passive participants and who might be swayed to my side. Step 5. The big reveal. Planning. I knew the big opportunity would come at the next team presentation. The stakes were higher, the audience wider, and the potential for embarrassment much greater. Exactly what they wanted. But I had already turned the tables. I prepared every file, every report, every slide meticulously. I created annotations that would highlight errors, altered numbers, and misplaced data, all without making it obvious that anyone had done something wrong. It was a delicate balance. I wanted the audience to see the inconsistencies, but I didn't want to publicly humiliate anyone, only reveal the truth. Step 6. The day of reckoning. The morning of the presentation. Everything seemed normal. I set up my laptop, double-checked the projector, and greeted colleagues with a calm smile. Everyone assumed the meeting would proceed as usual. The first slide appeared, with all their pranks intact, but annotated in a way that made the errors obvious to anyone who looked carefully. Subtle but undeniable. The audience began to notice. Heads turned. Whispers started. My colleagues shifted uncomfortably. They had thought their changes would go unnoticed, but now, highlighted and documented, the patterns of sabotage were clear. I spoke calmly, step by step, guiding the team through the presentation. Every misplacement, every altered number, every accidental mistake, explained, corrected, and shown in context. My tone was neutral, almost clinical, but precise. The result? My colleagues' attempts at humiliation backfired. Everyone saw the truth, and I remained composed, professional, and unshaken. Step 7. Management sees the truth. Management noticed. Privately, they commended me on attention to detail, professionalism, and handling what could have been an embarrassing situation without conflict. My colleagues, meanwhile, became noticeably more cautious. The subtle hierarchy in the office had shifted. Those who had tried to humiliate me were now wary, careful, and no longer acting without thought. Step 8. Extended aftermath. I spent the next few weeks observing the office dynamics. It was fascinating to see how a few quiet, strategic actions could reshape behavior. Tina and Marcus, once smug and confident, now approached projects with caution. Even casual conversations were tempered. My relationships with colleagues improved because they respected that I was aware, prepared, and unflappable. I also began mentoring some of the newer employees who had witnessed the situation by explaining proper documentation, communication, and careful planning without telling the story of sabotage. I helped create a more professional, resilient office culture. Step 9. Reflection and lessons learned. Months later, when I look back on the situation, I realized that outsmarting them quietly had done more than save face. It had established credibility, trust, and authority in the office without ever raising my voice. It had also revealed who could be relied upon, who was truly supportive, and who thrived on manipulation. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, methodical, and precise. It's preparation, patience, and letting the truth speak for itself. By the end of the year, the office felt different. People who had once tried to humiliate me now sought advice, collaboration, and approval. The culture had subtly changed, not through conflict, but through consistency, patience, and intelligence. And I knew, without a doubt, that I had not only survived their schemes, I had outsmarted them entirely. Story 2. A workplace thief thinks no one notices, but you do. 5,000-word version. I first noticed it on a Tuesday morning. My favorite leather-bound notebook, the one I kept for jotting down project ideas, sketches, and meeting notes, wasn't where I had left it. At first, I assumed I'd misplaced it. I retraced my steps, checked the conference room, my bag, even the shared office drawers. Nothing. Not lost. Not borrowed. Stolen. Reynolds and Co. wasn't a huge office with 30 employees. You'd think everyone would know everyone, but somehow, some people could hide in plain sight. That's when I started paying attention. It wasn't the first small disappearance I'd noticed. A pair of headphones vanishing here, a USB drive there, a stapler borrowed for a day that never returned. Nothing seemed to be taken for necessity. It was deliberate, small-scale theft. I watched my colleagues carefully, noting habits, interactions, and unusual lingering. The person responsible was clever, subtle, careful. They had perfected the art of blending in, of smiling at the right moment, of pretending innocence while quietly appropriating what wasn't theirs. And there she was, Rachel, mid-30s, seemingly friendly, always hovering near desks under the guise of checking on a project or asking a question. Her smile was warm, her laugh infectious, the perfect disguise. But I noticed I started keeping a detailed log. Each disappearance, date, time, description of the item, who was around, and what Rachel was doing at the time. Subtle patterns emerged. The thief struck during predictable moments. After lunch, when the office was quieter, when my manager, Mr. Halstead, was in meetings. Weeks went by. My mental map of Rachel's movements became increasingly precise. I noticed small tells, the brief hesitation before she left my desk, a furtive glance over her shoulder, the way she carried items with an extra layer of care. These signs were small, almost invisible to anyone else, but I saw them clearly. I began subtle tests. First, a unique pen on my desk. Nothing valuable, but distinctive. Within an hour, it was gone. Later, a notebook with an inside joke written on the first page disappeared in the same way. Each theft reinforced my suspicions. Rachel thought she was clever, untouchable, invisible. I let her. Over the next week, I escalated my tests. I left a USB drive labeled Project Alpha Confidential on my desk, accompanied by my Golden Boss notebook and a pair of headphones I no longer used. I didn't announce it. I didn't react. I simply watched. Rachel approached, as expected, with a friendly nod and an innocent smile. She picked up the notebook first, pausing briefly to glance over her shoulder. She tucked it carefully under her arm. Then she snatched the USB, slipping it into her bag with practiced precision. I pretended not to notice, my heart quietly pounding. This wasn't about catching her red-handed in a dramatic confrontation. That would have been messy. No, this was about proof, about having control, about ensuring there could be no debate, no gossip. No, he said. She said. I set up a small, discreet webcam in my workspace, angled to capture the area around my desk. I recorded every theft, every subtle movement, every hesitation. My spreadsheets grew, documenting times, items, and patterns of behavior. I didn't rush, I observed. I planned. One afternoon, the breakthrough came. Rachel reached for my desk organizer, lifting a small box containing USB drives. I watched from across the room, pretending to review an email. The moment she saw me glance her way, she froze for a split second, a small, telling pause. She tried to continue as if nothing happened, but I had noticed, and now I had video evidence. The following week, I expanded the traps. A decorative pen, a notebook with my name written inside, and a small novelty mug labeled Property of Alex. I left them in plain sight and carefully noted her approach. She couldn't resist. Each time, she acted the same, careful, practiced, but with tiny cracks revealing awareness of my attention. Meanwhile, I began observing the office culture in general. Some colleagues were completely oblivious, immersed in their own work. Others were gossipy, noticing but not intervening. A few, like Mara, a junior analyst, seemed quietly empathetic, watching the situation unfold with concern but unsure how to act. I kept her observations in mind, knowing they could be useful later. I didn't confront Rachel. I didn't make a scene. I allowed her to continue just enough to provide indisputable evidence. Finally, I decided it was time. I requested a private meeting under the pretext of discussing project updates. She smiled at me, seemingly oblivious to what was coming, chatting casually as she walked into the office. Rachel, I began, calm and steady. I've noticed several items missing over the past few weeks. I've documented each incident, and I'd like to review it with you. Her confident smile faltered slightly. Oh, missing items? She said, forcing a light laugh. I must have borrowed something by mistake. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I simply laid out everything. Photos from my webcam, my detailed spreadsheet, timestamps of each disappearance, descriptions of items. I spoke evenly, clearly, letting the evidence speak for itself. Rachel's demeanor shifted. She shifted in her seat, a slight flush creeping into her cheeks. I can explain, she stammered, but every attempt at justification fell flat against the mountain of indisputable proof. I gave her the opportunity to return the items voluntarily. She hesitated, looking at the neatly arranged evidence. Finally, she admitted to the theft. I then presented the evidence to Mr. Halstead, who handled it with measured professionalism. Rachel was required to return all stolen items. She was reassigned, her responsibilities adjusted, and no public embarrassment occurred. The situation was resolved efficiently, quietly, and with accountability. Afterwards, the office atmosphere shifted. Colleagues were more mindful of each other's property. Trust became a shared value rather than an assumption. I had demonstrated patience, observation, and careful planning could solve problems more effectively than confrontation or direct. In the weeks that followed, I took the opportunity to mentor Mira and a few other junior colleagues on best practices, tracking projects, organizing files, and maintaining vigilance over personal and shared items without ever revealing the full story. I encouraged a culture of accountability and subtle awareness, helping shape the office into a more professional, respectful environment. Looking back, the lessons were clear. The quiet observer holds the most power. Patience and methodical preparation can reveal truth more effectively than anger or confrontation. Sometimes, justice doesn't require shouting, it requires diligence. Even Rachel, once confident and brazen, became a cautionary tale. Her behavior tempered by the knowledge that someone had seen all along. The experience reinforced a simple truth. Attention to detail, calm reasoning, and evidence-based strategy always prevail in the end. The office had changed subtly but irrevocably, not through conflict, but through quiet awareness, preparation, and integrity. And in that realization, I found a satisfaction far deeper than revenge. A quiet mastery of my environment and the knowledge that subtle vigilance can safeguard not only property, but dignity and trust in a workplace